Welcome to the Quick Start Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and we have a very special edition of the show. Every Saturday, we're looking at miracle stories. On today's show, we're talking about Noelle and Sam Borgia. They are here to share their story of overcoming addiction and the mind-blowing, monumental miracles that they saw unfold as God came into their lives and transformed Sam's life. And we're going to get into all of that in just a moment, but we want you to check out our new documentary, Investigating the Supernatural Miracles. You can go to cbn.com/supernatural. We're sharing all sorts of different stories each and every Saturday. They're not the miracle stories you will find in the film. The film covers other stories you will not want to miss, so head on over to cbn.com/supernatural. And with no further ado, let's dive into Noelle and Sam's incredible story. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today. Noelle, you have a new book, Silence the Lion, Wage War on Addiction and Win, and we're going to get into all of that, but we got to tell the story first because this is a story that a lot of people will relate to. They may be going through it right now. They may have already gone through it. It may be themselves. It may be a loved one, but this issue of addiction. So, Noelle, I want to start with you here.
Yes.
When did you first realize that Sam had an addiction?
Well, we had a rather shotgun wedding. I was a divorced young mother with two little girls. And I tell the story in the book, but Sam literally showed up at my door one day in the middle of a snowstorm and was kind of trying to round up some neighbors to help them eat some good food for a Lions playoff game since everybody canceled due to the weather. So fast forward, that was in January of 2015. By March, he had a ring made. By July, he proposed. And in October, we got married. So
it was quick.
Serious. We knew what we wanted, but the thing is, I was much further along in my walk of faith than he was. I had been a Christian my whole life, grew up going to church and, Jesus was first in my life. And while it wasn't quite the same for Sam, he had such a hunger for the Lord. We went to church for our first date. We made all these plans. The Lord was involved in every step. And the only thing I knew about Sam was that he was in a terrible motorcycle accident when he was in his early 20s. And as a result, they had to almost amputate his foot. So he had 5 surgeries to reconstruct his ankle and try to attempt to reattach it. And he also broke his back. So he was kind of laid up in a hospital bed at home for a period of a year. And I knew that over the course of that year, he took some opiates as was necessary to combat the effects of the surgeries and the rehab and the reconstruction.
Which is common. This is a common issue. Yeah.
The first thing that I noticed was that Sam had to take this little pill called Suboxone. And, I knew nothing about the world of addiction. And, the way he presented it to me was it was just this little pill that you take and it kind of helps your brain to think that you don't need to take the, opiates you took during the surgeries, maybe helps to deal a little bit with the pain. And that's all I knew. And we got married. Very quickly thereafter, I began to discover that it was the addiction. Well, I didn't even know it was an addiction at that point. I just thought it was a chapter that was closed, and now we're on to our beautiful marriage. But things went south very, very quickly within several months of us getting married. And I attribute that to, the new role of a husband, a stepfather, all this stress of a mortgage and, home buying and wedding planning. And it all just kind of came to a head. At first, I thought it was maybe a drinking problem. Then I thought, well, maybe he's purchasing more pain pills because he did hobble around on his ankle. He was a chef. He always looked to be in pain. But about a year and a half into the marriage, I came to discover rather catastrophically that it was an active addiction of all of the above, alcohol, the Suboxone, of course, that he'd been taking, but then pills, heroin, crack, cocaine, literally everything. And then it just came to the point where, okay, so now what do we do? I don't know anything about this world of addiction. I thought my husband loved me. Why is he doing this? Why is he destroying our family? And that's basically how I found out. So
yeah, that's a lot to find out. And then Sam, I want to come to you for a minute because, we often don't get to hear from people who have gone through this, right? So here you are in this new marriage. And this is going to sound almost like a silly question because you're in it, you're doing it, it's happening. how aware were you that maybe these things had gotten out of control and that you were addicted to all of these things and that this was a dire situation? How aware at that time were you?
Yeah, addiction, as ugly as it is, it 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 can just consume your whole life. Everything that you're doing, whether you want to do good or you're just trying to get by. And for the most part, people in active addiction are not trying to go have a good time and get high. Literally, they're just trying to get by to feel a little normalcy in their life. So maybe you're not using every single day, but you're just trying to use here and there periodically just to kind of seem normal around your family and try to carry on with your work and your home life and everything. So in that point, like, you really, in active addiction, you can sell yourself on anything. You say, well, if I just take a little bit on this day, I can get by and go to my kids meet, or
Right.
whatever it is. So in that, you'll sell. The devil will just try to sell you lie after lie after lie, and then
And lure you further in
yeah,
with more and more substances. It's never the end of it.
right. I'll take a little bit of this, and it'll make me feel a little low. So I'll take a little bit of this,
Right.
pick myself back up. And you become your own mixologist, your own doctor.
It's a
And
survival mode, though, it sounds like, in
it
some
pretty
ways,
much
right?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somebody who's never even smoked marijuana in my life. I've never done it, and I'm not minimizing it by saying I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, right? So for me, this is not something that I fully understand, which is why it's so helpful to hear what you're saying, because I think a lot of people, they're trapped in addiction, and people think, oh, they're just having fun, they're, and maybe that's how it started for some people, but once you're in addiction, it seems like it's just controlling every facet of your life, and it's like treading water. That's what
Yeah,
it
that's
sounds like.
that's exactly the position I was in. Like, I didn't understand anything, and us as people that don't struggle with substance abuse, you use logic and reason and rationale and all these things and all these questions you form in my mind. Well, if my husband loves me and he loves our family and we just got married, he wouldn't want to be doing these things. If
Right.
he just overdosed 3 months ago, he's going to realize that there's detrimental effects to his body and he's not going to overdose again. But all of that reason and rationality and logic just goes completely out the window when you're dealing with active addiction.
So
I explain it the best. Like, you're in a big body of water and you're just treading water and you're just drowning, and you're just you're fighting so hard just to get your nose above that water, just to get a little breath and then continue. And that's just how it is. And that's the best way I can explain living in active addiction. And and it's not just that person in addiction. You affect everybody around you. Everybody suffers with the addict, and it's so sad. And we see it all the time. We see it every day. And
Well, I love that we're sitting here with you and we're having this conversation, because not only do we see it every day, but we also see that people find freedom, right, from it and
Yes.
navigate it. Both of you, I mean, that's one of the things that really attracted me to the story when I saw the pitch come through was, kind of taking people behind the wall, was just like, wow, these are people who have been through something really difficult. Noelle, you talking about the fact you go into marriage and this is immediately something you start to notice. And within a year and a half of a new marriage, that should be when you're enjoying it the best, when all the
Yes.
exciting things are happening. You guys, I would imagine, well, Noelle, you had a choice to make. Are you going to abandon this marriage? Are you
Right.
going to dive all in? And of course, you're a Christian, so that adds in extra elements to this.
Yeah.
But what did you do? Like, what were your first steps? And
Well,
then I
and,
want to
that,
hear
and
from you, Sam.
that's the it's even beyond that. So what I found out was not just about the addiction, but that he had lied to me and deceived me the entire time. He wasn't honest about one single thing. He didn't have a driver's license. He had multiple
Wow.
felonies. He had an active warrant out for his arrest due to all these drug possession charges. And he was actively struggling with addiction. So basically, what we built our marriage on, what I thought we were building our marriage on, I thought we were building on the firm foundation of putting Jesus in the middle of it, was actually a union of three. And I reference that in the book. It was me, Sam, and the lion, which is Satan in the
Wow.
form of addiction. So, according to the world, run. You know what I'm saying? Even my own father told me, hey, if you don't leave this guy, I'm going to disown you. Just leave him. He's not going to change.
Wow.
But
Your dad's, how did you navigate
oh,
that?
and now imagine Italian father, strict Italian Christian father. It felt like the whole world was against me. But for some reason, I don't know what it was, but it's just this feeling that the Lord planted this seed inside of me, and a seed of love. And when I didn't even like him, I don't know how to even explain it. And I know you're investigating miracles with your documentary. We were watching some of those, but the fact that I kept the faith, it just resulted in just such mind-blowing, monumental miracles. I can just only attribute it to, standing on God's promises for my life, and, declaring it, and kind of, I always kept that parable of, the lost sheep. Jesus left the 99 to pursue that one. And I feel like Sam had countless examples in his life. It started with his grandmother. Every time he tried to get closer to the Lord, the enemy attacked him and just tried to keep pulling him back down and spiraling into that pit. But then, I came into his life, and maybe that was one of the ways that the Lord was going to fulfill, his promises to him and his purpose for his life. So, it just was a monumental faith that I just would not doubt that the Lord was going to heal my husband. So
even though everyone around you is telling you,
yes,
get rid of him.
Yes. And we tried everything the world offered. He tried for 20 years. He had been in prison, boot camps, rehabs. We sent him to 2 rehabs. The insurance wouldn't pay for the rehab, so they send him home to me in the middle of detox. We tried psychiatrists. We tried programs. Whatever the world was offering was not working. And literally, one of the questions in our book here is, what does it look like when the Lord is your first resort? But I will even submit to you that it's one step beyond that. Like, the God was our only resort. There was nothing that the world was going to offer that was going to free him from this battle.
So, okay. And this is, and I love this, and it is miraculous, right? I think that it takes a miracle to break the kind of addiction that you're talking about. And so we could talk more about that, because I've been looking at miracles, and I've been looking a lot at medical miracles, but also we're doing other miracles around that at CBN News, because I think it's important that we look at all the different ways that God works. So we'll talk about that. And maybe, I don't know, Sam, you want to talk about that now, but what was it for you? Because you're the one who had to make the choice to lean into this, right? Just like Noelle had a choice, you had one too. What was it that made you say, now is the time, I need to heal? You had tried all these other things. What actually worked?
I mean,
well, you were dead pretty much.
Yeah, my addiction, and basically I was in a hospital. I tried to end my own life. I took a bottle of pills and alcohol, and I just didn't want to live this way no more. I tried everything else. I was done hurting people. I was done living in shame and guilt. I had no place in this world. I had nothing good to offer.
How far into your marriage was that? Just so we have clarity, so people understand.
So we got married in we got married in October of 2015. And by this point it was March of 2018. So it was just a little over 2 years after we got married.
So now you're dealing with a suicide attempt.
Yes.
In this. And okay, Sam, continue.
Yeah. So I was rushed to the hospital, and they put me in a medically induced coma because my body was just deteriorated. All my organs were failing. I was having heart attacks. My kidneys shut down. They weren't even sure if my brain was going to function properly.
Yeah, when we got to the hospital, he was in the resuscitation room, and they had given him a 5% chance to live at this point.
Wait a minute. A 5% chance to live.
Yes.
Sam, I want you to finish in a moment, but Noelle, when you heard that from the doctors, after all of this, I mean, you find out about this deceit, you're in the middle of it, you've barely been married, it's 2 years. What's going through your mind as you're hearing the doctors say that?
Well, it was just very catastrophic, because what transpired before that was he had overdosed 3 months prior, had a heart attack, had to be resuscitated multiple times. And then from that period on, that's what started. Okay, we got to get out of this. The rehabs, trying to see a psychiatrist, trying to get on the right path. But he just was shrouded in this darkness, and he just sank into this black pit. And at that time, he ended up going to live with his parents' house because he didn't want to live with me and be around the kids in that state. And he just started drinking gallons and gallons of alcohol. So one day, I was supposed to go pick him up for a tax appointment. And I went to his parents' house, and I found him in the bed, and he was just completely gray, not breathing, just gasping for air, foam coming out of his mouth. And that's when we called the EMS, followed the ambulance to the hospital, and he was in the resuscitation room. So
Did you suspect that he had tried to end his life at that point?
I did, because I had been trying to get a hold of him for, many hours. He was unresponsive, and I had thought to check on his, Facebook Messenger when his last active time was, and it was like 18 hours ago. And I said, okay, and over the course of our marriage, I kind of had these feelings where, okay, something's not right, and where fear just grips you. And that's where I'd hurry up and raced over to his parents' house. And that's when I found him literally almost, dead in the bed. They had to put him on life support. So he was on life support 9 days, and then you can maybe.
Yeah.
So Sam, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry. There's so many details I think are important for people to understand how deep this was, right? And
and by this time I had filed for divorce as well. Not because I did not want to stand by his side, but because it just, looking at the situation, it looked catastrophic. But I did not have the papers served to him. I just kept pleading with the Lord, give me one more day, just change his heart, deliver him. I don't want to get divorced. So here, I filed for divorce. We have to get our taxes filed. I go to his parents' house, find him in this, dead state. Then we finally follow the ambulance to the hospital, and we arrive at this double door set of resuscitation room where they deliver us the room. Like literally everything is shut down. He's got
with a 5% chance of
5%.
survival. And I want people who are watching or listening right now, the book that you wrote, Silence the Lion, Wage War on Addiction and Win. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. But Sam, back to you. So you're in the midst of this. You've tried to end your life. You have a 5% chance of survival. What happens next?
So the next thing that happened was they wanted to see if I could start breathing on my own, because
9 days later.
Yeah, 9 days later, it was getting to the point where just things, sepsis, everything was setting in and not looking good. The longer that you're in that medically induced coma, the worse odds are against you. I mean, just from infections to everything. So they said, okay, we're going to try to take this tube out and see if he can start breathing on his own. And they did. And I started coming out of that fog. And, I would love to say, hey, everything was great. I realized, but I didn't. I still had like that callous heart. It was still shrouded in darkness. And I remember waking up and then looking at my wife, and my mother was in the room, and I was just displeased. Like, I can't believe you guys just wouldn't let me die.
That was his first words when he woke up from the coma after 9 days. Why didn't you just let me die?
Like now to make matters worse, like I'm still alive and I just have a shell of a body. Like nothing's working. Dialysis. I mean, just every tube, everything you can imagine. So I was still like, I can't, Lord, he won't let me live? You won't let me die? Like, what do I do? And
he was mad at the world, basically.
Yeah. And it was probably a good 5-6 days after that.
Almost a week later. And during this time, I kind of talk about it in the book that his heart was kind of like the heart of the Pharaoh. Like no matter what they came in with, hey, you've had multiple heart attacks. We don't know if your heart's going to be able to make it. Hey, your pancreas is dead. Hey, you're going to be on dialysis for the rest of your life. And also they found out that he burst 2 vertebrae in his back when he overdosed and collapsed. So, hey, you're going to need a spinal fusion with rods and cages and going to be in a nursing home. And every day they would just keep rounding with bad news. And it was like, I talk about his heart being like the heart of the Pharaoh. Like no matter what they delivered, whatever they rolled out to him, he just kept that hardness around. It was like, nothing would soften his heart to say, hey, look what I did to myself. Look at what my life has become. Even just to talk kindly to the people in the room, he was miserable, just terrible state,
So, Sam, you're in this horrible state. What broke it? You're sitting here now. What broke that and made you say, I'm ready to not be this way anymore?
So this is the miracle. Write it down for your documentary.
the road that got me to where I'm sitting here today was that morning, or actually it was early morning in the hospital. And I remember there was no comfortable position to lay in. Like it was just total unrest, total disarray. I was just wrestling with emotions, and it was torment, and I remember just crying out to the Lord. I didn't care how loud I was, I just started crying, weeping. Lord, please help me. What do you want? Like, where am I supposed to be? I can't, I don't want to live like this. This road looks so bleak. And I remember just crying out and weeping. And it was probably maybe like 10 or 15 minutes after that, I was just sitting there, and I remember just like peace, just peace entering that hospital room. Peace followed by warmth. Warmth turned into just love, just surrounding me in love. I started talking about it. My hair, everything just starts standing up on my body. It was just a feeling that I never felt before, followed by just a release of everything that was going on. Um, Nothing looked bleak anymore. Nothing was like out of reach. It wasn't too late. That's like the feeling that I was getting. Like, nothing's too late.
It was hope.
It was hope. It was love. It was all these things that I haven't felt in a very, very long time. And even though I was in the state that I was in, I finally laid my head to rest, and I got like 2 hours of just the best rest. If you've ever been in a hospital, you can't rest. It's impossible. And I remember waking up, and my wife would call every morning. And I remember she called, and I answered, and she probably was just expecting the norm. And
what do you want? Why are you calling me now? Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. You're not my wife anymore. And then all of a sudden, he called me that day.
You saved the best, but
it's just like it was so, I could hear the change so evidently in his voice. It was like a softness and a gentleness, and like I could hear love in his voice. And literally, I mean, it was like the old Sam was dead, Jesus lived instead. And I talk about it like, when they say, if the Lord will circumcise your heart to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, that you might live. And I just feel like God just came in with a chisel, just stripped away all that anger, that bitterness, that shame, that, everything that Satan had been selling him, that he had wrapped around and tangled his heart with. It was like he literally had been revived. His body was still in a very wretched state. I mean, he was still on the dialysis. No good news medical wise, but inside his spirit, I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than like when I went to the hospital and saw him that day, like the air inside the room, like something shifted, like the Lord just met him, and he's never looked back. So, I mean, there's a lot of other miracles along the way, but it just literally happened that.
So the drugs were done. The drugs were done.
That was the end of it. 20 years.
I knew from that day forward that everything was going to be okay. I knew that I didn't have to carry this burden no longer. I knew that the Lord had a way better plan for my life. Mm-hmm. And no matter what, I didn't even have to think about it. I just knew. I had that overwhelming sense that everything was going to be okay. Everything was going to be right.
Did you, and this may sound strange, but it probably won't actually, because of this entire conversation. When you had those feelings of peace that came into the room, did you feel like it was God coming into the room, like God literally pouring over you in those moments, physically, spiritually, to just take it all away?
There was no doubt. I knew it was God. There was absolutely no doubt. I knew God came in that room. I knew God was with me, and I knew God was for me.
And that changed everything.
Everything.
And you guys had tried everything. And I think that's the thing that you both said. I mean, you try every single thing. And what I love about the fact that you've had this victory, and one more question, actually, Sam, before we move on to the book here, before we go, because I want to talk about the book and point people there, because you've been through this, you've done this, you've lived it, and now other people can benefit from what you've gone through and the lessons there. But you talked about dialysis for the rest of your life, spinal fusion, your body was in bad shape. Where are you now physically?
100%. I mean, I throughout all this, one thing I did battle, my kidneys were restored 100%.
Well, we got to tell the miracle of that. Yeah. So when he got released from the hospital, as soon as he got released, it was 16 days he was in there. He started his dialysis appointments the next day. And they said, you're going to be on dialysis the rest of your life. You got to see this neurosurgeon for the spinal fusion. So he ended up getting out of the hospital on Good Friday, which of all days. And, he was, in just this decrepit state, back brace, hobbling over on dialysis. And he said, you know what, pick me up for church Easter Sunday. And I didn't think there would be any possible way I could get him, but we got him there. And I had been going to church by myself this whole time when he was in rehab, in the hospital, all that. And I said, Sam, do you want to meet the pastor? Our wonderful pastor, Dominic Russo at Oakland Church. And, I told the pastor, I introduced him to him, and I told him a little about what he's dealing with. And we said, he's going to be on dialysis now. And our pastor just stopped and prayed for him right there on Easter Sunday morning in 2018. And he was praying so fervently and so, with such conviction and boldness. People around started coming and laying their hands around him. And when Sam called me that night later on, and he said, I got good news. I can go to the bathroom, because he hadn't really been able to urinate or anything. And he said, I think, God's working in me. And when you can describe how it felt when the pastor was praying for you, that you had this vibrations inside of you, and
the love didn't stop. So as Noelle said, she took me to church that day, and I never met this pastor, and the way that he prayed over me, he laid hands on me, and then others started doing the same. You just feel the love, and you actually feel like God's doing something, like this is real. This isn't just make believe, this is happening. Mm-hmm. And that on the way home, I said, Noelle, I felt something going on, with those prayers. And that was the end of the conversation. And that night, actually, I just started feeling like, wow, I feel like I got to go to the bathroom. And, when you're on dialysis, you could go just a tiny bit, just a little bit. But this was like full out going to the bathroom. I started this hooting and hollering.
Yeah. And then he went for...
I still had to go to dialysis. Yeah, I still went. It was, I would go and I would feel horrible, just like depleted, like it was not helping. I tried to, plead my case with the nurses, like, hey, something's not right. I feel horrible. And so I went another couple of times, and they did blood work in the meantime. And then I remember, like, the third time after that happened, the nurse came up to me and she said, we got your blood work back, and the doctor says your kidneys are fully restored. You never have dialysis again. And
you believe it was the prayer? You think it was the prayer over you?
I believe so. People, they'll have their doubts, but I know what I felt.
I mean, they told him, you're going to be on dialysis for the rest of your life. And even the nurses at dialysis said, yeah, nobody gets off dialysis. Once you're on it.
Yeah, the nurses were like, we don't want to give you false hope. Usually you get on this is, you got to learn how to live with this. So, there wasn't much hope in man's world,
Yeah.
But we knew better.
So, I mean, this is incredible. Now, all of this points us to Silence the Lion, Wage War on Addiction and Win. Noelle, what do you want people to take away from this book?
Well, our message is just that, you may have been told to lower your expectations, but God will tell you that your expectations are not high enough. And we feel like, even in the church, in the Christian world, people come to the Lord with, this one has cancer, or, I'm suffering from this physical ailment. But mental health and addiction seems to be shoved into this category that, oh, well, your son's stuck in addiction. Oh, okay, well, we'll just pray for you. Are we really coming to the Lord with, Lord, deliver my son in the name of Jesus? And that's what we feel like. If you can open your eyes to view yourself and see yourself the way the Lord sees you, and you tap into the boldness of faith, we truly believe that's the activator of miracles, and that what he can do for us, he can and certainly most will do for anybody that's listening. You just have to remove that doubt. That's it. You just trust the Lord's going to do it, and he's going to make the way. So that's our message: bold faith, bold expectation, and miracles beyond belief.
Well, you guys have lived that.
Yeah, you can tell we're very excited. I told you we're Italian, but
I watched my wife. she stood alone. When I say alone, I mean alone on her faith and her prayer and her promise. And she stood boldly, and the Lord delivered.
Yeah. Well, the book is Silence the Lion, Wage War on Addiction and Win. I appreciate both of you taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy, for having us.
That's all for today's show. You can head on over to cbn.com/supernatural to watch Investigating the Supernatural Miracles and to grab Noelle's book. It's called Silence the Lion, Wage War on Addiction and Win. You can get that wherever books are sold. We'll see you Monday for another episode of the show.